Welcome to Who We Become, Life Beyond Change. I'm your host, Amanda Lentz. This is a space for honest conversations about identity, resilience, and what it really means to rebuild after life changes. Here, we share stories of loss and hope, of challenge and courage, and of becoming someone new, even when life doesn't go as planned and the future feels uncertain. Whether you're navigating illness, grief, transition, or simply searching for meaning after change, you are not alone here. And I'm so glad you're here. Let's begin. Welcome to Who We Become, Life Beyond Change. Today's conversation is about the moments that don't make sense on paper, but feel undeniable in your gut. The decisions that look risky, uncertain, even irrational from the outside, yet carry a quiet clarity that you can't ignore. I'm joined today by Kiersten Hathcock, someone who knows what it means to trust that inner knowing, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's scary. From starting Mod Mom to walking through pivotal life decisions alongside her family, Kiersten has experienced what it feels like to stand at the edge of something new, without guarantees, without certainty, just a deep sense that it's the right path. And today, we're talking about what it really looks like to follow that pull and who you become when you do. So, Kiersten, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I love this topic, and I love that you are hosting this podcast.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so excited just to jump in, if we could,
Okay, sure.
to the beginning. So,
Yeah.
have have you always had a strong sense of inner knowing and knowing to follow that gut, or has that developed over time?
I definitely think that I had, from a young time period when I was little, there were times when I can remember feeling like the knowing was so strong. But I definitely believe that it has developed more into something that I trust, and that has taken years. I think one of the things that happens, I'm a childhood sexual abuse survivor, and I think one of the things that happens is you tend to not trust yourself because you've trusted someone, maybe that was a family member and they hurt you. And so, what was interesting about this journey is there are definitely times I can remember having the calm knowing, but there's also times when I definitely felt like I'm just following, the lead to make sure that I'm safe. I didn't really trust myself necessarily until I was in my 40s.
And I just want to acknowledge and thank you for being so open and vulnerable with your story to inspire others. And so, thank you for
Sure,
that.
absolutely. Yeah, unfortunately, it's an epidemic. It's a hidden epidemic, and I think there are many more of us out there dealing with childhood abuse than we know. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and it's so inspiring to hear people talk about it and have the courage to do it,
Mhm.
just to bring bring strength to others to know that they're not
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah, thank you.
And so, you know, you became really a household name when you were on Shark Tank and developing Mod Mom. So,
Yes.
can you take us back to the moment that you decided to start Mod Mom? What did that look like?
Absolutely, yes. It looked like a crazy moment in my life. So to go back in time, I graduated from Ohio University. I went right into corporate training and ed because that was kind of my background was education and communication, and got married, had kids, moved around the country, moved to Chicago, was in advertising for A&E and the History Channel. So my career was morphing, but I was still in communication. Well, we moved because of my husband's job to California. And it was at that point I have two little kids. And I'm thinking, I don't want to have to put them back in daycare again. I've got to figure this out. Maybe I can do contract work from home. Maybe I can nanny. So I literally, for a couple years, did both of those things
Wow.
and just tried, like, just tried to figure it out because I had a 15-month-old and like a 4-year-old. At that point, though, there was something I remember us, building things in our house, like building a coffee table, and just I liked woodworking because my dad used to build a lot of things for our house. We
Very
didn't grow up
cool.
very, yeah, I know, it's really cool. We didn't grow up with a lot of money. They were both teachers, so my dad would take like old bleacher boards and cut them down, and then it would become our coffee table type thing. So I remember at that point, I'm home with the kids. I'm also I was undiagnosed ADHD at that point, right? So I'm looking for things to do that will, help me really kind of harness that creativity that I was using in marketing that I wasn't using anymore. So I built like a track that our kids could ride on in the backyard. I did all kinds of like crazy things. Well, I also was thinking about the fact that we needed a toy box, and I thought, well, I built a track. I could probably do this. Like, I'll just figure out how to teach myself how to do it. So I ended up building a toy box. And I also thought, you know what? I really like that mid-century modern style. That was the style of our house. We're in Los Angeles. It's pretty common style back then for most people that live there. And I looked on the market for kids furniture, and there was only one other toy box that was that style. And I thought, I wonder if I could like if I don't cut my fingers off, maybe I could actually sell a few of these, and maybe this could become something that I do. So that's how Mod Mom started in 2006. So I literally just, eventually ended up buying a table saw from Sears, like a little 10-inch table saw, and started cutting everything in our really rundown garage. And was lucky. I do still have all my
Yeah.
fingers, which is a plus. And that's how it started. Yeah, that's how it started. So, and I wasn't actually on Shark Tank until about 2011, but when I started advertising, because I had a marketing background and built the website myself, taught myself how to build the website. I'm a true DIYer. It blew up, and people from all over the country started paying attention, blogs, design magazines. Then I started getting international orders. It
Wow.
was kind of, it was crazy to me because really, truly, I was thinking, there's got to be other people like me out there that want a toy box like this. And also, I need to pay the gas bill. Like, we've got to figure out how I can make more money from home. And that combination, was really the intersection of how Mod Mom came to be.
That is amazing. And you had said earlier, you it was until your 40s that you trusted your
Yeah,
intuition, but you found your way. You found a passion and made it
I
so from your
did.
garage so incredibly successful.
Well, I think, the part about intuition for me that really stands out during that time period is that the idea that I could do this, I had no design experience, no carpentry experience, and absolutely zero funding to do this, right? So it
Wow.
made no sense. And I had a lot of people around me saying, "What? Like, you're in advertising. Why would you, like, you really think you can do this? This is kind of nuts, right, Kirsten?" Right? So I just remember thinking that, no, this isn't nuts. I really feel like I know what I'm doing here. And the part of it that I think is so important, and I know we're probably going to talk about this, but the differentiation for me was that it was very quiet. This knowing that I had, it wasn't frenetic in my body. It didn't feel, like anxiety or anything like that. Every single time I was faced with someone saying, "This is nuts. What are you doing?" I just had this calm that kind of came
Ooh,
over me. And I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. I want to pay attention to that. And that's what I did.
that is amazing. And so then after Mod Mom,
Hmm.
you took another leap.
I did, yes. And honestly, this was man, after Mod Mom, and I always thought Shark Tank was probably gonna be the scariest thing that I'd ever do in my life. And for most people who know me from that world, it probably looks like it is. And it was terrifying. There were a lot of moments throughout Shark Tank and my experience there where I had to learn to trust my own intuition. And because I did, I ended up getting 2 offers. So that piece alone gave me the foundation to do the next thing, which was completely unexpected. So the next thing is I'm 36 years old. Out of nowhere, I'm in the garage, I'm building furniture. I start to hear and see kids, mostly in spirit form. And I thought, okay, I'm losing my mind. This is the polyurethane. I've been grieving. I come from a very scientific background. I had absolutely no interest in mediumship or the woo-woo or any of that. Like it wasn't even something I was studying. It just happened to me. And that was a huge leap of faith because, first of all, my first thought was, oh, this is schizophrenia. And do we have this in my family? I mean, I really went down that rabbit hole. But once I realized, no, this is actually real, I think. And I started to get validation when I would share messages with people. That's how I knew, oh my gosh, this is real. How could I know this? I don't know why I know this. That this piece was something that was developing in me. And it was intuition, times 1,000. And I had to kind of come to grips with that, first of all, and reconcile it. But I also then had to get the courage to talk to law enforcement, to talk to grieving parents, whose children were begging me to share messages. And I think that honestly was the scariest thing I've ever done. But I will say that in choosing to do those things, the commonality between when I started Mod Mom and those moments in my life where I knew, it was the calmness
Mm,
in me. I mean, I could feel anxiety about it, and I could feel the human nervousness of, oh my God, what if I do this and everyone thinks I'm nuts and I come out with this publicly? Because I didn't want to do that, to be honest with you. For like 3 years, I didn't come out publicly. But
wow.
once I did that and I sat back and I gave it some time, it was very, very calm. I would almost hear like a little voice that says, it's time, or it's going to be okay. I thought,
Hmm.
okay, it's going to be okay. Ah. Still nerve-wracking, but also calm, within.
Wow. What an incredible pivot from,
Yes.
you're on your third, almost third pivot from advertising to Mod Mom to now
Yes.
working with law enforcement and
Right.
sharing a gift. That is just amazing. And so
Oh,
when you took that leap, you
it's
said you'd waited 3 years, which,
mhm.
what a I can't imagine how that felt at that time. But
Yes.
um, now you've started, or you're working with NILJ. And so
Yes.
can
Yes.
you share a little bit about that and what did that season look like, not only for you, but for your family?
Sure, absolutely. So NILJ it's the National Institute for Law and Justice. And actually one of the detectives that I became good friends with and partnered with on some missing persons cases and we co-founded it together. His name is Detective Mark Pucci. He's retired NYPD detective. Never in my wildest dreams would I've ever thought that I was going to be, a carpenter turned medium who now works with cops. But Mark and I hit it off. I actually ended up channeling information on a case when he was looking for, unfortunately, this man was deceased and looking for his remains. And the information that I channeled for Mark that day saved his life during the investigation. So that forged a bond between us. We're kind of like brother and sister now. And we met in 2014, and then we co-founded the National Institute for Law and Justice, which is a nonprofit that helps crime victims and families, mainly families whose cases have gone cold and they're looking for missing loved ones or there's answers in homicide cases. So we founded that in 2021. And we try and do all of this free of charge for the families. This leap actually wasn't as terrifying, to be honest with you, as scary as the leaps before. Because now I had validation. Now I had, I had a detective, a very well respected, decorated NYPD cop saying, "She's the real deal. This is real. We can actually help people, working together." Um, the scarier part in this is that these cases that we work on are not easy cases, and my
Sure.
family has had to go from a mom who was literally just a regular old mom, right, going to Target, building a furniture company out of her garage, to now I'm working on cold cases involving serial killers. And so
Oh my
the
gosh.
space they have, I give them so much credit because that's a big leap as well. And on the safety side, it's a leap. So I'm very careful about what details I give out. Sorry, my dog is in here and she just Um, so I've had to think a lot about that piece of it. My kids, thankfully, because they grew up with me being intuitive, that started, when I went in like 2009, they're kind of used to that piece of it. But it definitely went to a next level, now that we're working on cases involving really scary, hard things.
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And so when you decided or you felt called or you had
Right.
this peace, right? And you
hmm
when you felt like you had to move forward, what what guidance or advice would you give to someone who may feel that same pull to something that's completely unexpected
Right.
that they're navigating with a family and a lot of considerations like you had just shared. What guidance would you give or advice would you give to them?
That's such a great question. I mean, I think first of all, when I realized that intuition, we all have it, right? So this is something that we all have, and it spans across, spirituality, religion, all of that. We are wired this way. Once I realized that, and I realized that it's also a very physical reaction, that intuition and what we feel physically on our body are very connected. That made all the difference. So I paid more attention. What I would suggest is if you have a crazy idea and everyone is saying this is nuts and you want to take a leap, is to really feel how it feels in your body. You just push out everything else everyone else is saying. Do you, does your chest tighten when you think about the idea? Do you get any kind of kick in the gut feeling when you think about the idea? Or is it really calm and you actually feel very calm about it? Because if it's calm, even though it seems crazy, it's your intuition telling you and helping to guide you along your path. And I think that's the biggest key is to really pay attention to the physical, intuitive signs that you'll get. The other thing that helped me, I'm a very visual person, obviously, as a furniture designer. And the other thing that helped me is I started to look for tools. Tarot cards, which was something that was very foreign to me, and can be very scary for people, or oracle cards. But I started playing with those some because I realized that it's really just a visual tool to show you what your intuition is trying to guide you to and show you. So I started working with that. I also picked up a pendulum. If some people might know what that is, but it's basically, I know they've used it to find water in the past, in the
Wow.
ground, things like that. But it's just a little tool that you can use, and you can see a yes or no answer by holding up a pendulum above your hand. And that gave me more of an outside of me intuitive, compass, I guess, as well. And all of these things, really truly just kind of help you develop the faith in yourself. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that because it's all just a visual compass for you.
Absolutely. And you had shared that physical feeling. And so,
Yes.
if someone's wrestling with this idea where
Mm.
they do feel that calmness, but there's also maybe some anxiety because it is
Mhm.
so different. How would you or what has your experience been like in trusting yourself and what does that look like in real time?
Sure.
As opposed to hindsight when they're wrestling potentially with, both feeling that
Yeah.
calmness and like, yes, this is my path, but oh my gosh, this is so
Yeah. Yeah.
new and uncertain.
Well, the thing that I learned, and that I would say that that's absolutely the case with Shark Tank. My dad mentioned Shark Tank. It was the second season it was on in 2010, I think is when I filmed. And he said, "Hey, there's this new show and you live in LA and you should do it." And immediately I had like, there's no way. I can't do this. I'm terrified. What if I fail? I can't be skewered on national television after I watched an episode of it. But I gave it time. And I think that's the key. I gave it time and I revisited it the next day. And I sat with it once I wasn't in the midst of the feelings of anxiety of just failure and all of those things that we feel as human emotion. I detached from it some. And then I asked the question. And that's another thing that I wanted to mention too is that, sometimes I'll take a couple deep breaths, I'll close my eyes, I'll ask myself, my higher self, my intuition, is this the right thing for me? And whatever that first answer is that I get back, I'll trust that. So for me, it's recognizing that as humans, we're going to have these feelings of anxiety and fear. And none of that went away throughout my journey. My heart pounds before I get on stage. If I'm talking to a grieving parent or if I'm working on a case with Mark, I'll still feel all of that. But when I have a chance to put a little space in between when I feel those feelings and what the actual real question is, and what I'm questioning, should I go this route? That has been super helpful just to understand, give it a little bit of time.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
And so you've made several significant leaps of faith
Yes.
almost where you
Yes.
are changing
Yeah.
what you're doing, how you're showing up. And so what do people maybe not understand about what happens after you make this leap? Or what has your experience been like that you think may be helpful to share for someone
Mm.
who's wrestling with the decision or maybe compliment or contemplating making this leap?
Sure. Well, I think we also I think as humans, we like to put everything in a nice, neat box. And so
Yes.
even when people would see me on Shark Tank, they'd be like, oh, that's great. She did so, yay, happily ever after. No, that's not
Yes.
how it is. You can make these leaps and take these leaps, and the balance that you have to find is between trusting your intuition. Because some people think that, oh, okay, well, I did the thing. Now let's just let it all unfold, and then action, right? So you have to figure out like that's not the case for me. I actually had to do things to continue to make the company grow or to continue down that path. I
Sure.
couldn't just sit back and say, okay, well, I did it. Is okay? Is it all just going to happen now? So
Hmm.
that has been an interesting journey too of figuring out, okay, what is my doer self wanting to do? Because I like to spin wheels and I'm ADHD, and I constantly feel like I need movement. The times when I will sit quietly and ask, like if I'm at a juncture where I know I either need to do something or I need to pivot, that's when I will use my intuition and get quiet and really feel, okay, how does this feel in my body? Am I hearing a yes or no? That type of thing. Because you are going to face hurdles. You are going to face all kinds of different moments, even after you've made that change. But the more I relied on my intuition to help me as a compass, the more I stayed on my path, and it led me to a book deal and now a TV series that's in the early works. So
That's
things like I
amazing.
know it's crazy. Yeah, it's something that I didn't see coming, but but I also felt very strongly intuitively that there was more coming. I just had to be open to it.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think it's so important to recognize that just, once you make a decision, there's still action to be taken,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
We still need to help ourselves move forward. We just have that sense of that this is the right direction.
Exactly.
And were there any we touched on this a little bit, but
Okay.
moments of doubt where you're like, oh man, is this the
Yes.
right thing? I know you've shared, sitting,
Mhm.
just having some quiet
Yeah.
time, but how did you move through those doubts where, people when you started Mod Mom think, really,
Uh-huh.
you're
Yeah.
starting this or you're completely changing now into helping solve crimes? What is that doubt or how do you manage that doubt?
I think that what I've learned over the past, 16 years since my intuition really, came into its own is that the more I trust it, the more clarity I have, no matter what. And I think that, there are definitely moments of doubt. Like the path will be going one way and I'll think, this is it. This is it. And my brain wants to figure out, oh, okay, well, this is a nice, neat package here. And then something happens to derail whatever it is that I thought was going to happen. I had a deal with Frank Lloyd Wright for which was amazing, right? Like this incredible architect.
Wow.
The foundation decided that they wanted to partner with me on the first ever kids line for Frank Lloyd Wright, and it was Mod Mom, Frank Lloyd Wright, kids line together, right? So as you can imagine, like it was just very surreal because I had no design background that I was being chosen for this. Well, the furniture line launched on April 1st, 2020. which was not ideal
Oh,
because we're literally at the start of a national pandemic. And, those things like leading up to that, I was like, this is it. This is amazing. Oh my gosh. And this is going to lead to even more and more and more licensing deals. Well, that entire journey actually mostly led me to hunker down because, of course, it failed because we were at the beginning of a pandemic and there wasn't anything that we could really do about that. But it led me to a book deal. It refocused me to what it was that my intuition was screaming that I needed to do. Even though didn't have an agent at the time, I had no idea that I would be able to be a traditionally published author. I just had no idea. So, that it can look like it's going one way, but honestly, it felt more like a redirection to the right path for me.
that's amazing. And learning.
Well, there's so much that I had to learn about discernment. I think that would be the biggest overall for me over the last decade. And I think, again, to kind of circle back to being a childhood sexual abuse survivor, you learn not to trust yourself because you were hurt. And discernment was not something that I was good at. I was trusting the wrong business partners. I was trusting the wrong people in my life. Now I'm still learning discernment. And I'm learning to really trust those feelings that I have. I feel like I'm really good as a medium, and that is kind of outside of me, and it's in a nice, neat box over here because it's case related. But if I go to a cocktail party and I meet someone, I'm still learning, okay, why did I feel I don't know. There's something about that person I just don't feel right about. And prior to my intuitive awakening, I would have dismissed it and I would have just barreled ahead. Now I'm really truly feeling like I'm honing that and understanding, I listen to my body and I listen to how that feels. And I really have tried to continue to learn discernment. That would be the key for me right now.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And as we close, Kirsten,
Yeah.
I know you are just so incredibly busy with the work that you're doing, the nonprofit, your book, your TV series, and so and you're speaking, and so how can people learn more about you? How can they reach out, or what does that look like? How can people find
Sure.
you?
Oh, yes. I love getting emails. I love, people reaching out to me. It's pretty easy. You can go to my website. It's kierstenhathcock.com. I'm on all of the things, Instagram, kind of TikTok. I still, I'm 52, right? So it's harder for me to get on the TikTok train. But Facebook, all of that. So, but kierstenhathcock.com is probably the easiest way. And feel free to reach out and share your story. I, frequently will respond when folks will write to me and share what, has been happening in their lives. And I love to know that we're not alone. We're all kind of in this together.
Absolutely. Well, in closing, I just want to say thank you for your honesty, your vulnerability, and for sharing your story. And for anyone listening, if there's one thing to take from this conversation, it's this: not everything that's right will feel safe, and not everything that makes sense will feel true. Sometimes the clearest direction comes not from logic, but from that quiet, persistent knowing inside of you. So, Kirsten, thank you for reminding us that becoming doesn't always look predictable, but it's always meaningful. And to everyone listening, if something is asking or something in you is asking for your attention, you don't need all the answers. You just need the willingness to trust yourself one step at a time. And so until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and keep becoming who you're meant to be.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for joining me today on Who We Become. I hope this conversation reminded you that growth isn't always easy, but it is always meaningful. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need it. And if you haven't already, be sure to follow, rate, and review the show. It truly helps these stories reach those who may need a reminder they are not alone. Remember, what happened to you is part of your story, but it is not the end of it. You are not defined by what happened to you. You are shaped, by how you rise. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep becoming who you're meant to be.